Hello and welcome back, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm so excited you're here again this week. Last week I started talking about turning your passion into profits, and I shared a story about how I've turned one of my passions into a business, which is now a profitable business. And, it's just a blessing of God, and it was birthed out of a need that I had. And the Holy Spirit helped me with his guidance. I was able to make turn that from just being a need into a passion, into a business, or just an idea into a business. And so, as I always say, entrepreneurship is a journey of discovery, and there's stages along that journey of discovery. Today, I want us to start off by going into the Word of God in Matthew chapter 25. This is the parable about the financial stewardship. Most people know it as the account of the talents, but it's really about financial stewardship, and it's really appropriate for this series that I'm sharing with you. So let's begin in Matthew 25 verse 14. It says, "Again, heaven's kingdom realm is like the wealthy man who went on a long journey and summoned all his trusted servants and assigned his financial management over to them. Before he left on his journey, he entrusted a bag of 5,000 gold coins to one of his servants, to another a bag of 2,000 gold coins, and to the third a bag of 1,000 gold coins, each according to his ability to manage." And I want to stop there for now. This is very interesting that this wealthy man, he summoned all of them. He assigned his financial management over to these servants. It's the same thing with us. God gives us the ability to create wealth, but he is assigning us financial management of what belongs to him. So these guys were stewards. They were not owners of this money. The money didn't belong to them. It belonged to their the wealthy man, to their boss. And so he just assigned his financial management over to them, and he entrusted each one with different amounts of money, or we always say different amounts of talents. But again, it was each according to his ability to manage. And I like to take that to translate that into business or into entrepreneurship. When we talk of entrepreneurship, there's stages in entrepreneurship along that journey that we all go through. Many of us start off working for someone as an employee. So you'll be working a job, and during that time you might have an idea, you might have, even a passion, a creative ability to make something or do something or provide like a service to people. And you're just doing it just to help people, not necessarily for profit. But, you can then turn around and see that, okay, if many people like this, perhaps there's a possibility or an opportunity to turn it into a business that can generate wealth. We need employees. So not everybody is cut out to be a business owner, because it's a lot of work. And again, it requires, or each one of us has been given ability to manage. So business requires management. And if you are not the type that wants to manage stuff or manage people, perhaps business is not for you. And perhaps yours is to work for somebody else, support somebody else in their business, and you'll still make money, but you will not maybe generate the level of wealth that you desire. And you still could. However, perhaps you just, you need to work for somebody. And in the Bible, God talks about business and he talks about work. So work is honorable. It's not something that, you don't, shouldn't do. I also advise, especially, fresh entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs, that if you have a job and your business hasn't taken off, or your idea hasn't taken off and become a business that can, sustain you, then you want to keep your job. There's nothing wrong with you staying on your job as you work on your passion until that passion can be turned into a business, to where now you can actually generate income or pursue your passion full time. So most will start off on the part-time while still holding on to a regular job where you're getting a steady paycheck, steady income. Amen. And so some people, being employed by others is a safety net. But for others, risk takers, they might, step out and take risk, because that's what entrepreneurship is about, taking risk. Now, if God is calling you to take risk and step out, then, I encourage you to do that. But again, we are led by the Spirit of God, so we just don't do things without using wisdom. We need to make sure that, okay, if I step out to start this and put all my effort in this, I can, have enough money to live on, take care of my family, or pay bills and all that stuff, but don't let that comfort of being, on a job and having full time when a full-time paycheck, when that you really need to invest full-time. There's certain businesses you have to be there full-time for them to actually even take off. So again, it depends on the type of business that you want to start. Now, like I said, usually with any passion, usually it becomes a hobby first. So we start out as business hobbyists, and what is a business hobbyist? Is somebody who offers products or services, for a personal enrichment, not necessarily for profit. So you're not doing this, to generate wealth. You're doing it because you just are passionate. We read that about Dorcas in Acts chapter 9 last time, where she was making stuff and giving it out to the widows. It was an act of kindness and charity. That's what the Bible called it. And so perhaps she was a dressmaker, a seamstress or whoever, and she was making all these things and giving these out. So she wasn't necessarily selling. We're not told in the Bible that she was selling. And so you can be like that. You can be someone who's offering a product, or you're offering a service, for personal enrichment, and so usually if you're in the hobby stage, you're not yet a true entrepreneur. That's just a hobby, where you like making stuff and giving it out. You're not an entrepreneur. And as a hobby, you're not taking any risk at all, because you have nothing to lose, and so, there's no commitment also. That's another thing. When it's in a hobby stage, there's no commitment. Whereas if it's in a business stage, you are committed to your customers or your clients. But in a hobby stage, there's no commitment whatsoever to make that business thrive, And so there's no economic goal or financing strategy to produce significant profit, because it's still in the hobby stage, But hobby stage is good. Don't get me wrong. It's good because you're learning. In that hobby stage, you are learning how to offer a service. You're learning how to create good products, that quality products that, will be received on the market, and people will actually trade for that, pay money for that. So there's nothing wrong with being in a hobby stage. But if you want to generate wealth, you can't stay on that level. You will have to, if you want to expand, or if you want to generate profit, you can't stay on that level. You need to, step up and go to the next level, And so the question that comes to mind is, how do I know if my business or if my idea or this passion that I have, which is a hobby, can become a viable business? How do I know that? Well, if you decide that you want to turn your hobby into a profitable business, first you have to develop, an economic stream or channel that can fuel profits, higher profits. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So you have to, simply said, let's say if it's a product, so like in my case, start selling it, put it on a platform where people can buy, so that it starts generating income. Secondly, you have to develop a commitment, a true commitment to drive revenue. You can't just because you've made something and put it out there on the market and then sit back and wait. You have to put in your all in that. Now, there are some hobbies that are not going to necessarily become your primary source of income. might be something part-time that you do on the side. But, you know, there are some that can. But if it is in that stage where you've started it and it's still like in the hobby stage and you're not necessarily, you know, it's not yet your primary source of income, but that's what you want. Well, the questions you would need to ask yourself is, does this hobby that I have, does it meet a need in society? Is there a need for maybe this product or this service that I'm offering? You know, is that, and for you to determine it's a need that is felt, or there's a need out there, people must, you know, desire it. They must feel that they lack this, either this product or this service that you're providing. It has to be acknowledged by people to determine whether it's a need or not. Because sometimes we can make stuff, but it's not necessarily a need. You know, people don't feel like, well, I need to have this. You know, people, and now with, you know, after the pandemic, people are trying to, you know, cope, some with joblessness and some with just, you know, just everything that took place. And so some of them have no money, no income. So when you're selling your product to them, is it something they really need? For instance, during like the pandemic, going back there, you knew that there was a need for food. People needed food. So businesses in the food industry, they made a lot of money because there was a need for food. Everything was on shutdown. Okay, now not everybody, of course, like some restaurants, if they didn't have like the drive-through or delivery, you know, they couldn't, or carry out, I think it was, then they couldn't generate income, because if all they depended on was people coming into their establishment to purchase their foods, then they couldn't make money when there was a shutdown. So most restaurants, they pivoted. They started offering delivery. You know, they partnered with delivery companies out there. And then that's where we see a lot of other delivery companies were birthed. Individuals would, you know, offer to do delivery. Some would, you know, start getting contracts from these delivery companies that were already established previously, because there was a demand. People were ordering in their homes. So for instance, like even where I stay, there were usually in the past, they never used to be a lot of people delivering to where we stay, because we're really more out in the country. But then during pandemic, because there was a need, there was a felt need, delivery started coming. People started bringing stuff, you know, to the point that now we can order stuff from the store and it can be delivered. Whereas before it wasn't. And so that, if you were in that industry, whether you were in the food industry that provided delivery, or you were in the, you know, transportation business that provided delivery, you made money during the, you know, pandemic, because there was that need. Another need was, you know, tutoring, where students needed to be taught, because now parents couldn't stay, you know, well, when they were home it was okay, but then now when things started opening back up, some schools were still not open and parents couldn't stay home, and some companies required people to go back into, you know, for their jobs. Well, now you'd have to find private tutors, and that's where those who were in the, you know, education industry, they now made money by offering these services that they could, because there was a need for that. There was also a need, you know, I remember for some commodities like toilet paper, there was a need for soap. So those are things that you look at, you know, when you're determining, is this hobby that I have, is it, you know, servicing a felt need in society, or is it just something I'm making just because I want to make it? Okay, so people always want to eat. So if you're in the food industry, you're, you know, good, but then you just know how to position yourself, and we'll talk about that in future series of positioning. But then there's also the need for, you know, people had to have food, people had to have food delivered to them, you know, you knew that was a need. And so there was an opportunity, a huge opportunity during that time for people to start this or start that. Now, there's still some things that are trending. that there's still opportunity, so you can start that. Another thing to ask yourself when you're turning your hobby or your passion, wanting to turn it into a business, is this product that I'm offering or this service that I want to offer, will people be willing to pay for it? Okay, will they be willing to pay for it? Because if they're not willing to pay for it, then if you're investing in this, it's a waste of time. You're losing your money because nobody will want to pay for it. Do you have the ability or the commitment to transform this hobby into a sellable product or service? Do you have that commitment? Because it can just be a hobby, but you have to be committed to turn it from a hobby or a passion or an idea or a dream into a viable business. Again, is it worth leaving your job if it requires you to be there 100% full time? Is it worth leaving your job? So if you ask yourself the previous questions, well, then you would know at this point that, you know what, there is a need. There's people are willing to pay for this service or pay for this product. And so, yes, it's worth me leaving my job to pursue this full time. And I know that, you know, it will generate the wealth or the income that I need to be able to live on, but also long-term generate wealth. You know, so it's not only, you know, if in terms of leaving your job, is it worth you investing all that time, 100%? Is it worth you, is it going to be worth the money that you invest into it and the money that you pull out eventually? When you are starting out a business, you have to also do research on expenses. You know, the expenses that you're doing for your business, but also think about your own living expenses. If you decide that, okay, I'm going to focus on transforming this passion, idea, dream, or hobby into a full-time business, how will it affect what I'm currently doing? I always say, jump when you have solid ground. Don't jump when you don't have solid ground. You know, while you're still pursuing, while you're still working or making it to become or to get to taking it to the level where you can even quit your job. You know, that's why the Bible here talked about each one was given according to his ability to manage. Are you able to manage? You have to look at the capacity. You have to look at your ability. Do you have the ability to be able to manage this to where it can start generating income for you right away, where it can be helping, you can be getting your livelihood from this business, what is your target demographic? You need to find out that, yes, it could be like, for instance, for the woman with the issue of, the woman with the oil, she had the issue with the creditors, and she had that debt that the husband left. And God said, what do you have in your house? She has the oil. Now, back in the day, oil was a very high commodity in their market, in their times, which meant that everybody pretty much knew that if they wanted to make money, they would sell oil. But she went to the market that day with the help and the leading of the Holy Spirit, and she was able to sell. Now, we don't know if she sold everything at once that day, but we know that she was able to sell enough to where the creditors stopped coming to her house, and she was able to pay them off. It really generated wealth for her, not only to pay the debtors, the creditors, but to be able to live off of it, And so first you've got to, check how many in my demographic, who, are targeting, my same clients, and what are they offering? How is their offering going to be different from mine? And then of course, are you willing to put in the time that it requires to develop your business, instead of just the hobby itself, but the business side of it? Because there's two sides. There's the side where you're creating the actual product, or the service that you're providing, but actually now working on the business itself, because there's two different things. For instance, taking my skincare business, I create the products, but that's not the business. That's just the production part. And then there's the side of the business, the administrative side, where now I have to the marketing and the selling and all that. That's the business side, which generates the income. So it's different from the making the products. And I've seen with some entrepreneurs that they think because I can make this and I make it so well, and because I love it, everybody's gonna love it. But remember, now when you're making product, whatever products you're making or creating, you're making it for the people, the market. So you have to think in terms of, if I'm a customer wanting to buy this product, will I buy this product from me, or will I go to the next person? So there's work that needs to be done on the business side. And so you've got to have that commitment to work the business, not just to make the product or or work on the hobby itself. And so another thing that happens when people are starting out in business is, you had this hobby, you started out with this hobby and you were passionate about it, but then you get to a place where now that you're wanting to turn it into a business, it takes the joy out, so now you're doing it, but I don't feel like, and I'll give you an example. I started making cakes. I learned how to make cakes when I was 7 years old. My mom used to teach me back in Africa, but then I never really did anything with it. I mean, I would make cakes here and there for my kids and stuff, but I never decorated them. And one year I had been hospitalized, and when I came out of the hospital, I had to, recover, learn how to breathe, learn how to walk, all that stuff. And so during that time, I really had gone on sort of like a mini sabbatical from the ministry. And so I really wasn't doing any travel, doing any speaking engagements and stuff. I was just homebound. So in that moment, I said, Lord, I still am serving you. I'm still in the word and I'm feeling better now, but I want to start something. Can I do something that, I'm just, I needed to fill my time. I was going, crazy with just, having all this time, I mean, I was in the word, don't get me wrong. I was spending time in the word, but I just needed an outlet. And so I said, God, what can I do? I asked if the Lord would permit me to start something at that time. And the Lord said yes. And my desire was, you know what, let me start baking again. But then I didn't know how to decorate. I was like, I don't know how to decorate cakes. I know how to bake them. So I actually signed up for a course and went to learn professional cake decorating. And so I went through the weeks of learning, and it was fun because then I was actually, I would bake. They would want us to bake from home and then bring it in, and then, we decorated there. And so I learned how to do the basic professional cake decorating. We concluded that. So I started now making stuff. I started by making and just giving away to people. Like if a person had a birthday or they had a graduation or they had a shower or something, I would start making just to decorate because I was practicing. And I'll just give it away. I'll be like, oh, I'll make it for you. I would literally look for people, and it happened like people would always tell me, oh, this is going on. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll make it for you. So the first year I spent giving away cakes to people, just making birthday cakes for kids and stuff. It was a way of me practicing how I could present this product on the market. And so the following year, I started now actually making cakes for business, making cakes for sale. And so because I'd built, a customer base. Remember, when you're starting out, you won't have a customer base, but as you go along, you'll start, building up a customer base. And so I started building a customer base, and I was posting all my stuff, my work on Facebook, and people would comment and people would like. And so now I started adding a price tag to it and started selling. Man, I was getting orders left, right, and center, and I became so busy. When I was doing it once in a while, if I did one cake a week, I was still, I loved it. But then at the end of the third year, I was so tired. Okay, I was so tired now when I would get all these large orders, people are placing $7,000 orders for cakes and stuff. It became work. It became too much work that now it wasn't as exciting for me anymore. And so at that point, I realized, you know what? I'm no longer as excited and passionate about making these cakes as I was when I started, because now it has turned into work for me. It's caused me to lose that joy that I once started with. And at that point, I decided I couldn't do it anymore. And so I quit. I shut it down. Everybody was like, oh, take it. Why don't you start a bakery and all that stuff? But I wasn't passionate. At that point, I wasn't desiring to start a bakery. So my mind wasn't at that level. And I knew that was a lot of work on its own to start a bakery. And that's not what I was prepared for mentally and emotionally and even financially. So I said no, because I had other things that were priority. And so because of that, I stopped baking cakes and I shut it down. And I kid you not, to this day, people are still calling me, asking me about my cakes. When are you going to do, can you do a cake for me? And it's been almost, 4 or 5 years that I stopped doing the cakes, but people are still writing me in, oh, I really wanted the cake. Aren't you doing cakes? Why aren't you doing cakes? Because it took away, me now doing it for business took away the joy that I had. And so I realized that if I ever want to turn it into a business, I can't be the one managing the business. I can be the one making or advising people to make, hiring people to make, but I can't be the one running that business, because that now would take away the joy. And so that's what I'm trying to explain about, when you're starting out. Next time when we meet, I'm going to go further into the other stages of entrepreneurship. God bless you. I pray that you've been blessed this weekend or this week with this message, and you apply it to your life. And I look forward to sharing more with you next time. Be blessed. Bye-bye.